Today we'll start with a new chapter, biomolecules. This chapter we are going to start today. Initially, it's something very simple. Later, when we go ahead in the chapter, you may have a bit topics where you need to go into a little more depth of chemistry. So, as of now, let's start with something very general. This is biomolecules. To analyze the chemical composition of a compound, the analysis which is done to find out the chemical composition of a compound. Beta, when I say chemical composition of a compound, it means what all chemicals, what all elements are present in a compound. This is called chemical analysis. Okay. So if you have to do a chemical analysis, basically what is chemical analysis? Analyzing the chemical composition of a compound. Any compound I give you ABC, you do some test, you do some experiments and find out that what is the composition of that compound. Then that is what we call as chemical analysis. So how would you define chemical analysis? Analyzing the chemical composition of a compound. Analyzing the chemical composition of a compound. When we say analyzing, we mean what all is present, in what percentage is present, what is present in a higher amount, what is present in a lower amount. All this is what we call as analysis. So when you do the analysis, and that is the chemical analysis of the chemical composition of a compound, we call it as chemical analysis. We have some steps now. First we'll learn how to analyze chemically a living tissue. The first part is we'll be taking it into different parts. First I am telling you chemical analysis of living tissues. We are talking about the organic tissues, we are talking about the living tissues. How will we do chemical analysis of living tissues? Number one, what will be your first step? Take the weight of the living tissue. Whatever living tissue I give you, whether it is a piece of a fruit, a piece of a vegetable, or a body tissue which you can take out from inside your cheek, anything. So what is the first thing that you need to do? You need to take the weight of the living tissue. Second, this tissue is then to be grinded in a solvent trichloroacetic acid. You have to grind it, and then in grind it in which solvent? You have to basically grind it by adding a solvent to it. And what is the solvent which is added? It is trichloroacetic acid. Cl3CCOOH. It's very simple. The formula of acetic acid is CH3COOH. All of you know this. So in CH3COOH, the H3s, that means the 3 hydrogen atoms, are being substituted by 3 chlorine atoms. Is it okay? So the name becomes trichloroacetic acid, and the formula is very simple. It is Cl3CCOOH. Third beta, now you will get a slurry. What is slurry? A semi-solid waste is what we call as a slurry. What you have got now is a slurry because your tissue and the solvent, that is trichloroacetic acid, are mixed now. So you get a thick paste which is called as slurry. Now the slurry which you get has to be filtered. Either you can do it through a cotton cloth or you can take the cheesecloth. Cheesecloth, what you call in Hindi as muslin, it has a lot of holes in it, minute holes. So now the slurry is filtered first through cotton or cheesecloth. Next step is, once you filter this, you will get 2 fractions of your solution. After filtration, you will find that you are left with two fractions. First is the acid soluble fraction. That fraction which was soluble in your acid, soluble in which acid we had taken? Trichloroacetic acid. So the first part or the first fraction which you will get is the acid soluble fraction, and this is called as filtrate. What are you going to call it as? Filtrate. So that fraction which is soluble in your acid is called filtrate. You will also get another fraction which is insoluble in your acid. This is acid insoluble part, and this fraction is called retentate because this is retained. RETENTATE. Retentate. Retin, RETEN, retin, TATE, retentate, because this is retained behind. This is not soluble, so it is left behind. Retained behind matlab piche reh jana or left behind. Then we use the word from the retain, we get this word retenate. So from the fraction of the solution, you have got 2 things: the acid soluble fraction which is called filtrate, and the acid insoluble fraction which is called as the retentate. Now the extract that you have got is subjected to many separation techniques. Now, a lot of techniques. See, this was a major filtration technique which we did with the help of cotton or cheesecloth. After this, you will have to do advanced separation techniques to get whatever components you desire. You will have to decide which separation technique I need to go for. That will depend upon which component you desire. All the carbon compounds that we get from living tissues are called biomolecules. Now, what are biomolecules? The name of the chapter. All the carbon compounds that you will get from living tissues. When you take a living tissue, you do the chemical analysis, you will find that there are some carbon compounds that you get in the living tissue. So, all these carbon compounds which we get from living tissues are what we call as biomolecules. Is it clear for everybody? All the carbon compounds that we get from living tissues are called as what? They are called as biomolecules. I hope the definition of biomolecules is clear to everybody. All carbon compounds that we get from living tissues are called biomolecules. Now we have learned how to do analysis or chemical analysis of living tissues, organic tissues. Now the second step we'll take up and find out how to do the chemical analysis of inorganic compounds. Supposing you burn, now what happens is first you burn a living tissue, you will see that ash is obtained. If you burn any living tissue, you burn a piece of a vegetable or a fruit, you will see that some ash is obtained. Ash is actually the remaining part of any living tissue which remains after burning of an organic compound. You burn any organic compound, what will happen is after burning you will find that there is some part which is left behind, and that is what we call as ash. How do you define ash? The remaining part of any living tissue which remains after burning of an organic compound. Ash analysis is done to analyze the chemical composition of inorganic compounds. If we want to do the analysis of inorganic compounds, then the best technique to do this is called ash analysis. What is it called? Ash analysis. What is the procedure of ash analysis? Number one, you take a small amount of living tissue and then you dry it in the oven. Why are we drying it in the oven? To evaporate all the water. After evaporation, you will get the dry weight. After that, you burn the tissue completely. After all the water is evaporated, you put it in an oven. You are getting the dry tissue now. You burn the tissue completely. You will find that ash is produced. What is produced is ash. See, one thing is very clear, that all the carbon compounds must have oxidized to become carbon dioxide and they are already removed. Because when you are burning in the presence of oxygen, all the carbon which must be present in that compound must have reacted with oxygen and formed CO2 and left that compound. So CO2 is already out. Water is already out because we put it in an oven, the vapors have already gone. So what is left behind in the ash is only inorganic elements like potassium, sodium, calcium and magnesium. So when you want to do chemical analysis of inorganic compounds, the first thing that you need to do is remove all the carbon which is present in it and remove all the water. Obviously what will be left behind is the inorganic elements. So simply in ash analysis, we took a living tissue, we dried it in an oven so that water is evaporated, we got the dry weight, then we burnt it completely and what was produced was ash. We know that all the carbon which is present in the compound will get oxidized to form carbon dioxide and remove and leave the compound. Finally, what is left behind is the ash, and ash will contain the inorganic compounds, inorganic elements like potassium, sodium, calcium and magnesium. Now, there is another term which I am introducing. We have already done the analysis, how to analyze the living tissue, how to analyze for inorganic elements. Now I take up the next definition, that is cellular pool. Cellular pool. What is cellular pool? The sum total of different types of, listen beta, we are talking about cellular pool. Pool means what? A total of everything. We say pool of students. If I say, it means collecting all of them. So what is a cellular pool? Sum total of different types of biomolecules, compounds and the ions which are present in a cell. If you talk about a cell, obviously there can be three things present in it. Either it may have biomolecules, it may have some compounds or it may have some ions. Remember these three things. Inside a cell we could have biomolecules, we could have compounds or we could have ions. So add all the three of them. So sum total of all biomolecules, compounds and ions which are present in a cell is what we call as a cellular pool. It contains more than 5,000 chemicals. If you go and test for the chemical composition of a cell, you will be amazed to find that it contains more than 5,000 chemicals. Cellular pool. So how would you define cellular pool, children? Sum total of all biomolecules, compounds and ions which are present in a cell, and it contains more than 5,000 chemicals. We already know what are biomolecules. Just now we did the definition of biomolecules. We have already done what are biomolecules. Now there is another term which I am introducing, that is biomicromolecules. Very simple to understand. Those biomolecules which are small in size and have low molecular weight, they are known as biomicromolecules. So what are the two characteristic features of biomicromolecules? Number one, they are small in size. Number two, they have low molecular weight. The molecular weight is somewhere between 18 to 1800 daltons, not more than this. So what are biomicromolecules? Those biomolecules which are small in size and have low molecular weights, 18 to 1800 dalton, they are known as biomicromolecules. Remember that these biomicromolecules, they are highly soluble. They can be organic or inorganic, both the kinds. They can be inorganic. Let's talk about water, salts, minerals. They are all biomicromolecules. Okay, what are they? They are biomicromolecules. Their size is small, their mass is less, so we call them as biomicromolecules. So example of inorganic biomicromolecule is water, salt, minerals. Biomicromolecules can also be organic, for example sugars and amino acids. If we talk about sugars, they are not small in size, their molecular weight, they are small in size, their molecular weight is also comparatively low. So both of them are examples of biomicromolecules. So what are biomicromolecules? Those biomolecules which are small in size and have a low molecular weight, somewhere between 18 to 1800 daltons, are called biomicromolecules. They are highly soluble. They can be inorganic, example water, salts and minerals, or they could be organic, for example sugars and amino acids. Now let's do the details, a little more details about macromolecules. The first one that we are going to study about macromolecules is carbohydrates. The first macromolecule which we will be taking up today is carbohydrates. Very simple. What are carbohydrates? They are organic compounds which are made up of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Carbohydrates, what is the main composition? They are made up of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. They are produced directly by the plants during photosynthesis. We know two things about carbohydrates, that they are made up of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Number two, they are produced directly by the plants during the process of photosynthesis. They are also called saccharides. What are they called as? Saccharide. Why are they called saccharides? Because the main constituent in them is sugar. So we call them as what? We call them as saccharides. Let's talk about the types of saccharides now. Number one, monosaccharide. Very easy to understand. This is the simplest carbohydrate. It contains 3 to 7 carbon atoms per molecule. In one molecule of a monosaccharide, you will find 3 to 7 carbon atoms. So what all we need to remember in monosaccharides? They are the simplest carbohydrates rather. Second, each molecule contains 3 to 7 carbon atoms. Third, they are called reducing sugars. Why are they called reducing sugars? Because they have a free aldehyde or ketonic group and they can reduce the cupric ions to cuprous ions. Three things we need to remember about monosaccharides. Number one, they are the simplest carbohydrates. Number two, they contain 3 to 7 carbon atoms per molecule. Number three, they are called reducing sugars. They are called reducing sugars because they have the power of reducing. Okay, and why do they have this power? Because they have a free aldehyde or ketonic group. What do they reduce? They can reduce the cupric ions. When I say cupric, I mean Cu2+. What do I mean? Cu2+. And they will reduce these cupric ions, that is Cu2+ ions, to Cu+ ions, which are known as cuprous. So when we say cupric, it means Cu2+. And when I say cuprous, it is Cu+. So they will reduce Cu2+ into Cu plus, or you could say they reduce cupric ions to cuprous ions. That is all you need to remember about monosaccharides, simplest carbohydrates, 3 to 7 carbon atoms per molecule, called reducing sugars because they have a free aldehyde or ketonic group. They can reduce the cupric ions, that is Cu2 plus ions, into cuprous ions, that is Cu plus. Two examples of monosaccharides, very easy ones to remember, ribose and glucose. Remember these two examples of monosaccharides, ribose and glucose. Moving on to the second type of saccharides, they are called oligosaccharides. Oligosaccharides are formed by the condensation of 2 to 6 monosaccharide molecules. Like in polymerization, you remember we have monomers, exactly the same over here. Okay, many monosaccharides will combine together 2, 3, 4, 5 or maximum 6, and this leads to the formation of what we call as oligosaccharides. So one monosaccharide is combining with another monosaccharide, what you get is a disaccharide. Okay, now listen carefully. What is oligosaccharide? It is formed by the condensation or polymerization, in simple words if I say, of 2 to 6 monosaccharide molecules. The bond between the two monosaccharide units is called glycosidic bond. Glycosidic, glycosidic bond. Obviously, when 2 or 3 monosaccharide units will combine together, we need to have a bond between these units. So, the bond which exists between two monosaccharide units is called as glycosidic bonds. On the basis of the number of monosaccharide units, they can be also of different types. Okay? On the basis of monosaccharide units, they are of the following types. Number 1, disaccharide. The name itself will give you a clue. It is a sugar which contains 2 units. How many units it will have? 2 monosaccharide units. We call it as a disaccharide. Why disaccharide is important, children? Remember that it is a non-reducing sugar. It is a non-reducing sugar. Now because one monosaccharide is attached to another monosaccharide, there is no free aldehyde or ketonic group. So its reducing power is lost. So it will not be able to act like a reducing agent. So what about disaccharides? It is a sugar which is made of 2 monosaccharide units. It is called as a non-reducing sugar. And why is it a non-reducing sugar? Because it cannot reduce what we said, cupric ions to cuprous ions. And why it cannot do this now? Because we do not have any free aldehyde or ketonic group left. Example of disaccharides, we've got sucrose, maltose, you remember 2, they're sufficient. Trisaccharides consist of what? 3 monosaccharide units. Just remember the example, that is raffinose. Raffinose, raffinose. And the last one is tetrasaccharides, of course 4 monomer units. And the example is stachyose, Stachyose. This is very easy to remember that disaccharide is made of 2 units, trisaccharide of 3 units and tetrasaccharide of 4 units. What we need to learn is the examples. Disaccharides, the examples we have just discussed, sucrose and maltose. Trisaccharide, it's raffinose, Raffinose, raffinose. And tetrasaccharides, it is stachyose, Stachyose. So this is all about the classification of saccharides and how do we chemically analyze a living tissue and